It's really nice to see such a nice turnout tonight, and as you can see, we have our presentation is Turtles and Beavers Mitigation Solutions with Kari Gunson. I wanted to give you a little information on her background. Kari is the principal road ecologist at Eco-Kare International, which is located in Peterborough, and it is a research-based consulting firm that studies and is based on research to work on conflicts with wildlife and roads and other situations. Now, Kari has a unique blend of international, biological, and technical expertise. I will read it because I don't want to miss anything. She has a Bachelor of Science in Zoology and Ecology from the University of Calgary, a Master of Science in Conservation Biology from the University of Cape Town, which I wasn't aware of, and a Master of Science in Geospatial Technologies from the Environmental Sciences and Forestry, State University of New York. So Kari's been around to many, many places to get her education. She also has 18 years of experience as a contract road ecologist and ecospatial scientist. She's conducted research and done applied road psychology throughout Canada, the United States, and Mexico. She spent 6 years in Banff National Park on the Trans-Canada Highway Project. She was the analyst for Highway 93 North crossings in Montana. It goes on and on. She analyzed spatial temporal hotspots for moose in Vermont. So as you can see, a wide variety of background. She also is very well connected in this field with science-based background. She's presented and published at 7 biannual International Road Ecology Conferences and presented at 3 European International Road Ecology Conferences. She was a keynote speaker at Toronto Zoo, a co-author on Small Animals Roads Guidebook 2015, many, many more things. Now, this is all to show she's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. This is obviously a very big concern, conflicts with wildlife. Too often, the solutions they're not sustainable, they're not humane, they don't service the animals, and they also don't service the people who try other solutions. Moving an animal isn't a solution because when you move an animal, other animals move in. Killing obviously isn't great for the animal, and again, the animal's gone, other animals move in. So Kari has, as she says here, her mitigation solutions. Through her various projects, she's provided expertise for design, placement, and monitoring of mitigation measures for a variety of large and small animal species. She also recently graduated from the Beaver Core program with the internationally recognized Beaver Institute and has been using this knowledge to help mitigate conflict solutions involving beavers. So that's why we have beavers. We know she also has a lot of experience with mitigation of road conditions with turtles. So she's going to speak about the techniques that are available to provide some holistic solutions for mitigating wildlife-human conflicts. We are very fortunate to have Kari, and I twisted her arm. I know she's really, really busy, and no, I don't feel sorry that I've done that because I'm really happy you're here. Thank you, Kari.
Where did you get all that information? You must have gone on my website.
I've been all over.
Oh my gosh. Because I sent to you a little paragraph.
I know you did.
Oh well. Yes, it's going to be interesting to try and tie this all together, but I have worked with a lot of variety of large and small animals. I actually did a school assignment in Cape Town, I think, on disturbance ecology, and I used the beaver as that focus, the focus for that project. But anyway, so we talked about that in 2020, I recently took the Beaver Core course, which is practical technical reading quizzes, about 6 modules, and then you go out in the field and you implement mitigation solutions for beavers. And I'm going to then tie into road ecology with that. So the basis of the road ecology in beavers is every animal is affected by roads. Okay, so beavers plug the culverts on roads because we've built a road through wetland habitat. Turtles are trying to cross the road to get access to habitat. We need them to go through the culverts to do that safely. Then I was finding the beaver dams in the culverts blocking my turtles from moving through. So I was trying to find solutions for everything to work cohesively. So that's how I started with beavers and road ecology. And then I'm going to talk about the geospatial part of my work, which is every project I do as far as hydrology. I look at hydrology with roads, culverts, obviously we're built for water flow, but we're now using them for wildlife passage as well, and turtles and aquatic, semi-aquatic turtles. Those drainage culverts are very beneficial. So we'll talk about try and tie that all together. It's interesting that my uncle John Gunson worked with beavers in Ontario when he was working for the MNRF here. So then he moved to Alberta. Actually, most of my family moved to Alberta, which is why I was there and working in Banff National Park. He started a beaver management program with Alberta Fish and Wildlife. So that pamphlet I pulled out was from 1980, and he invented a pond leveler. There's many names for it: pond leveler, beaver deceiver, and he called his Gunson pipes. So it must have been my calling. But I didn't even know that until we met at a barbecue and we shared the stories. Okay, so an interesting piece of history too here in Ontario. The Ministry of Transportation is very proactive. It's a large entity, but it is very proactive in the Haliburton region, the Northeast region. They have pond levelers documented, implemented, installed, maintained as part of their everyday maintenance protocols. So they're contractors, the road maintenance people are trained and implement. I think it's the MTO staff, personnel that implement, then the contractors maintain. So I would like to know how that works and find out and be able to implement that in other areas of Ontario, especially with the Ministry of Transportation on its highways. That'd be great. So we need a lot of education and workshops, and we can also learn from other municipalities who are also implementing these kind of mitigation measures that I'll be talking about today. So I graduated from this program. You can find a Beaver Core person in every, almost, not in Canada. There's very few. We've got Alberta covered. Only me in Ontario. We need a lot more of me. But what Mike Callahan's trying to do with the Beaver Institute is having a Beaver Core rep for every, probably he would like to have a beaver person wherever beavers are to implement and teach how to put in these cutting edge alternative solutions. Alternative means coexistence with beavers, to keep them on the landscape rather than trapping them. And there's many reasons for that, and I will discuss that. Why? So just to touch quickly on road ecology, beavers, all animals are impacted by roadkill. And what's going on here is mainly because I'm working a lot with turtles, I'm looking at where roads bisect wetlands, and that's where the beaver turtle road interface comes in. So what we do, I already mentioned that we put in designated crossing structures, underpasses, overpasses as well. I'll show some pictures of them. Underpasses, open top, so that we can have turtles see the light shine through and keep them warmer for the turtles to cross through. And we also have them going through the drainage culverts. This is some of the wildlife crossing structures from Banff that there's now 12 installed. So what's very unique about that is we installed 2, showed they worked, and then they installed more. It's nice to keep the momentum going. In Ontario, we've installed 1 12 years ago. No momentum. That's the only one. We need more. We showed it worked. Why don't we have more?
Where is it?
That one's on Highway 69. And that's where there's reptiles, turtles. It's between Parry Sound and Sudbury, closer to Sudbury. So we're working on one in this region, actually. And Ryan Danby actually spoke to the naturalist group about it 2 years ago in the Algonquin to Adirondacks area. So we're working on some bigger structures like this. So got to keep that momentum going. Same with these beaver solutions. You just have to keep going, getting more people and more people trained and educated. So the drainage culverts, I would come to these are what we call underpasses for turtles, and I would come to my underpass sites and I'd have these beaver screens. But the beaver screens aren't effective, obviously, for turtle passage, and turtles get stuck in those screens, and other animals, but also the beavers still dam up against the screens. It helps with maintenance because the beaver is no longer damming inside the culvert, so it's easier to clear the dam with that screen, but there's still maintenance. So those screens aren't helping the situation 100%. Okay, so one more thing with road ecology, we also need to put in this exclusion fencing with these underpasses. You don't necessarily need a lot, depending on the terrain and the mosaic of habitat around the crossing structures. You could have 100 meters, 100 meters, and 100 meters just spanning the habitat, the wetland habitat. That's all I'm going to say about road ecology per se. This is my last slide. Wildlife on Roads. Wrote this book 2020. It was published with Dr. Fred Schuler. And I do have some copies of that book here today if you would like to buy one. Come see me after this talk. That'd be great. And it's about identifying why you would want to find, observe, document, collect good roadkill or alive on road wildlife. Okay, and I know that there's some people in this room that are actually contributing to that database. And thank you for that. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little bit of a turn. I've talked about turtles and how I got into this, and now we're going to move into the turtles and the beaver aspect. So why do we want to help turtles and beavers at the same time, and why is this all coming together? Well, turtles, there's 8 species in Ontario. All of them are on the species at risk list federally. So number 2 threats to turtles are habitat loss and roadkill. So what's happening to the turtles? Well, I just said we're taking away their wetlands. So we need the beavers to give them their wetlands. So that's a perfect case for anybody who is taking away wetlands to save wetlands and to get grant money and to give it rationale and purpose and to educate people to say, we need these beavers, we need these wetlands because we need our turtles. And it's part of the whole food chain kind of thing. I think that was just to show that we need protocols to save beavers for the turtles. This slide, that's a really good video, YouTube video. A fellow talks about how in a region in Quebec, there's 90% of all beaver wetlands have Blanding's turtles in that region. So that's a really awesome correlation. I couldn't find the data for that. It was done by Nature Conservancy Canada. And the Blanding's turtles use the beaver dams to bask on top of. So that's providing really good habitat for them. So the problem is, I've already somewhat said this, is that we put a road through a wetland. We then have a risk of flooding with the wetland and the road. If water's raised too high, beavers can make that even occur more so. Then we have residential houses that are close to the wetlands, too close to wetlands in the floodplains, and then they are under threat of perhaps flooding. And then we take away the habitat to build these houses and these roads. So this is a problem. And then, of course, then when we make the habitat less adequate for turtles, then turtles are moving more and having to cross roads and get road killed. So it all is connected and a big problem. There's their subdivision, road flooding warning. So how do beavers help? We know that they create wetland habitat. We know that they enrich biodiversity, e.g. turtles, and they provide wildlife viewing areas. So in residential communities, we can try and find an equilibrium and a balance to have all of this to make a healthier community. And I mean, beavers do way more than that, as we all know. The big one, the bigger, broader picture is that beavers help with climate change. They keep the water on the landscape instead of it running into our oceans. So now we have a fresh water source to keep our landscape clean, to help with drought, to filter our water, and things like that. So that's the biggest one. And especially with fires, increasing fires in our landscape, beavers can come back in and they can re-nourish landscape by having water and growth and vegetation. So where do beavers like to build these dams to make their wetlands? Well, that's a whole big topic, but two of the main things that I've come across and that are obvious are the road culvert scenario, because the road is a big dam and keeping the water on that one side, but the culvert's letting it run out, so they want to plug that because it's a hole. And then also, quite often, if you look at the aerial Google Earth imagery, this is in Kingston, at a site I was just at, you'll have your pond environment, and then any channels that come out in the inlet or the outlet are obvious places, 5 feet wide channels, obvious places where they will dam, and then you get a scenario like where the road will flood, where they plug it up, or in this case there's a park, but then there's residential community there and over here, and so then the residents phone the municipality and they say, we are going to maybe have some flooding, but those residents, if they were informed and the municipality was implementing the solutions I'm going to talk about, and we are trying to make those work, then maybe the residents will see that they're working, and then hopefully we can reach an equilibrium where the beaver exists, the residents' houses don't flood, and we just keep the water levels to a happy place for turtles, beavers, and the flooding problem. One thing why turtles like beaver ponds is because beavers like about 1 to 1.5 meters of water depth where their lodge is. I read that today. And turtles, also Blanding's turtles, need about 1 to 1.5 meters for hibernating because they can't have the ice freeze when they hibernate underneath. They need, so it's the same situation for both of them, both animals. Okay, so the first thing you can do is you can plan for preventing conflict with beavers. And one way to do this comes back to road ecology, is we can build bigger culverts. And that's hard for, I don't think we thought that way for the last 100 years, but we have to start thinking that way now, and we have to put the money up front, because for many reasons, flooding, more water on the landscape, flash floods, we're seeing this more often, and also the turtles do like about 1.2 to 1.8 meter tall structures to let a little bit of light in, to get them in there. You don't necessarily need that at all places if they're crossing anyway. So again, you got to look at the landscape. So that's another reason. And then if the beavers do build a dam and larger, they might not be as inclined to do so, but if they did, then the dam still actually allows, that's a dam and about 1.8 meter wide culvert, that dam still allows turtle passage because we monitored that with a camera. You'll see right here. And we still had tons of turtle passage. All we did was the beaver liked it too, was we took out a little bit of the debris in the middle of it where he's standing, and then the beavers and the turtles went that route all the way back and forth all the time, every day. We have a lot of pictures. That was our best culvert out of 20 that we monitored. Okay, so that's kind of the planning. You can plan for, first of all, we shouldn't have put roads through wetlands in the first place, like silly. And then secondly, so in the future, let's not do that anymore. And then let's put in bigger culverts if we have to put it through wetlands. So that might mean raising a road too, because we have to make it all fit. Anyway, so now we have our existing landscape that we've put roads and subdivisions and us all over the place. So now we're trying to work with all these situations. So how can we do that? Okay, maintain water flow that prevents flooding and also provides habitat. So we need water flow. We need to encourage beaver damming in a suitable alternative location, and I'll talk about that. And then we need to protect our infrastructure from the damming in the first place. So that's kind of like the toolbox that the Beaver Institute, Beaver Corps course teaches you. That's the fundamentals right there. And now you have to kind of put these all together for each site. And that's where the experience and the landscape site visits come in handy. Step one is, for me, this is my favorite part, is mapping it all and looking at the flow of water and trying to understand where the beaver would dam, and if it dammed there, what would happen with the flooding, and then if we took out that dam, what would happen as well. And those kind of measuring, like basically I'm talking about being a hydrologist. I'm not a hydrologist yet, but I would love to take courses in the hydrology part of it, and then we can implement the solutions much better on the landscape if we have it all mapped. This is an example in Rouge Urban National Park, where the West Duffins Creek runs all the way down from the Oak Ridges Moraine in the Greenbelt. It's a massive, massive watershed. And because of development, we've narrowed the passage to a narrow passage, so there's a lot of water flow, very fast water flow with flooding and things like that. And beavers go up and down that whole drainage. So Rouge Urban National Park is going to be proactive and work with the beavers in that system and hopefully keep its infrastructure intact. So I'll show some slides on that project.
In Scarborough?
Yes, yeah, Pickering. So this is a map, Highway 7 just north of us, Tweed. We did some road ecology, turtles. This is where this site got me into the whole beavers, turtles. Lots of wetlands, and there was lots of Blandings turtles. We found road-killed there. So the first thing we did was we mapped, and this report is on my website. And a lot of people have read it, because it's my only beaver report right now on my website, because I have to redo my entire website. But Highway 7, big wetland there. They're crossing kind of like this, and we mapped the culvert, where everything is, how the water's flowing. There was a flooding conflict here with a landowner. So he's the one trapping the beaver every winter on his land. He owns that land there where the turtles are. And so what we did was we put a pond leveler in on the one dam, and it worked great. The beaver lived with it. We only took half a foot of water off. And I told the landowner, see if you got more grass and you're able to cut it. But I think what happened, and then of course the money ran out. I think what happened was the landowner trapped that winter. We got another beaver in, and then that beaver, within about 3 years, that beaver built another dam. So the important lesson there was, and I still want to go back and try to engage the MTO, but then it was COVID, and I think what happened there is that trapping incident. And so the point is you have to go there and maintain and adapt And there is something we can do. That's the red dot where it built the new dam. So we could put a pond leveler in there, try and work with the beaver. So there's a lot of consultation. This is a new field, same with road ecology. We need a lot of workshops. We need a lot of education. We need to talk to people and get them convinced that these things can work, to invest money into them up front, and then you will save money in the future. Those kind of things need everybody working together. So the step 2 is devising your preferred solution. I put the 3 bullets a couple slides ago, and those 3 solutions entail, the first one is pond levelers. Everybody's heard of pond levelers. Again, everybody has their own name, but pond leveler describes it. It's a good one. And the Beaver Institute, what differs is the design between the Gunson pipes and the pond leveler that the Beaver Institute uses up there. And then, of course, there's the beaver deceiver that Skip Lyle uses. So, and his is more like formed to the site. But they all have, what they have in common is that they have the inlet of the water, we're on the flooded side, upstream, the water you're trying to move. They all have a protective cage around there, so the beavers can't detect the water going in there. So they can't, and if they did, then they would try and dam the cage, obviously. So you want to keep that secure. Then you need a lot of pipe, about 12 meters, because you want the beavers, you don't want the beavers digging around the dam and messing with that cage and things like that. So you want it far away. It's better for flow. And it flows up, and then the water goes down to the level of where that pipe, that outlet is in the dam. So if you want more water off, you lower it. If you want less, you could actually take it out for a season, whatever you want. So you can kind of control that. And you hope that the beavers just build on top of the pipe and that they just live, because that's why you only take maximum a foot off, and you have to have 3 feet on this side. So that's the assessment part, to see if you can do that. This is pond leveler we installed in Lost Bay with a canoe. And we have to go back and actually I'll show you a picture, a diversionary cage fence around the culvert. You should do that as well, because there's a culvert right behind here, because then the beavers will go to the culvert. You have to get the township involved now. So we have Ontario Nature, we have the town, we need the township, we have the stewards, the friends that live there. So there's quite a few people you need to get involved on these projects. It can take a little bit of work, because you can't touch a culvert unless you have the township involved. So this was on Highway 7, what we first tried, because we were learning on this site. And this was a diversionary dam. I talked about putting in a diversionary dam on a culvert. The idea here, so this is a starter dam, and I'll show some better pictures. And the idea here, we just made it with sticks. And the beaver did build on it. It actually worked. It got more complicated because not enough water was flowing through. So then we put a pipe in. You can put a pipe in and then get the water going past that diversionary dam. But then, of course, the beaver might build a dam over here. So you have to, that's why you got to pick your spot. So that's why we moved downstream to the other dam. And anyway, so they built on that dam. That's a diversionary dam. We're trying to get the beaver to dam away from the culvert. That was the purpose there. This is the starter dams I was talking about. So this is done by the Beaver Institute. This is how I should have done all my projects. I always was missing a piece on my learning projects. I'm getting much more experience now. So this culvert has the protective fence. So it protects, the beaver won't, if it's trapezoidal and it's enough length, the beaver won't attempt to dam it all. It's too much work. So that's the idea of the trapezoidal fence, protects the culvert. Then putting a dam in here, because the beaver's going to dam somewhere. If it can't dam there, it's going to dam somewhere else. But they've protected the infrastructure. And that's important. That's one check mark. And then we're going to say you can dam here, because they know that if it dams there, they can tolerate that flooding there. So that works in that site. And again, there might be some adaptive management. I have a site like that in Rouge. That's exactly what we're doing. That's the one. That's the Rouge Urban National Park. We put the trapezoidal fence, protected the culvert because the beaver was continually damming. It was actually a small bridge, and if there was flooding there, then it was very easy for the road to get washed out. And then we're going to put a diversionary fence in right there this spring, and the beaver dam's there, and then there's lots of, it's meadow habitat up there, so the road should be protected as well if we do that. And this is a scenario where you mix and match. So you have the pond leveler, plus you have the trapezoidal fence. As I said before, it's possible that the beaver will dam around that trapezoidal fence. You try and deter them from doing that. To be on the safe side, you can put in a pipe. So that doesn't matter if they dam around there, and then you still have water flow. So that one's a little bit more work. It's 2 scenarios. This is an interesting site. This is Sauble Bayfield, a very sandy area near Pinery Provincial Park. I think it's Lake Huron. Big wetland, and a lot of spotted turtles. A lot of spotted turtles considering how rare they are. Blandings turtles, musk turtles, everything going through here. And they had a beaver screen. We took the beaver screen off. Since then, the beaver has tried to plug the culvert. So they brought in the machine to remove the dam in the culvert. And I'm hoping that they will. I've written a lot of assessment reports at this point. I'm hoping now we can implement here. And I'm thinking the best solution here is one of those protective diversionary fences around the culvert, keep the culvert safe, but then you won't have water going into the culvert with that. But you will, if the dam isn't that high, you will still have water going during flooding events. So it's not like we've stopped water continually. So when you need the water to flow, it will flow, and so that's fine. But you could also put one of those pipes in. That's a perfect site to put one of those pipes in with the cage. And then we have exclusionary fence just to tell the turtles to go through there. So the one thing we might want to do here is to make sure when we build that diversionary fence around the culvert is we have a gap between the exclusion fence and where that diversionary fence or dam comes around. So there's a gap so turtles can come up here, hit the fence, and go around and then back into the culvert. So the problem with that one a little bit is that beavers turtles can't get straight into the culvert if that diversionary dam is there. So that's where I come in. I'm trying to think about everything for everybody kind of thing. Sometimes my brain goes a little. This is that gap I was telling you about that Mike with the Beaver Institute, he has on his website that. So the turtles or the wildlife that come up, they will see the fence, they'll come up, and hopefully they'll go into that gap and through the culvert. That's a one-way gate. If you have turtles coming that way and you had no gap there and they were stuck, I've seen that at our site in Prince Edward County. We put one of those trapezoidal fences around a culvert, and we photographed a snapping turtle trying to get past that. So he builds in one-way doors for wildlife to keep going so that they can go out, but they can't come in, because you don't want beavers going in, because then they could dam. But it would be very difficult for them to do that because they couldn't get their sticks through that little hole. So it works. That's that Rouge Urban National Park site. We went on a visit 2 years ago, and this was the dam in front of that culvert on a trail. It was a trail access. And we left it and we were pondering what to do. It was a big dam. How are we going to get rid of that dam, and what are we going to do? Well, trapezoidal fence would have been perfect, but we didn't get funding to do anything for a while, and that ended up, because of the water pressure on it, that whole bridge got washed out. So then Rouge Urban National Park said, we got to do something, but we want to keep the beavers. So that's where I came in, and that was the site before the trail got washed out. And then now they're moving the trail. So you can see how expensive it can be if you do nothing. So this is a little bit further south from that site. So we marked where there was potential flooding along the road with that red line, and sure enough, there was flooding the next season, I think. And that road flooded because a beaver built a large dam underneath, just like the one it did up north. So it could have been the same beaver, we don't know. And so we said, okay, we're going to remove this dam and put in that trapezoidal fence for starters. And so we did that. Mike, I showed this to Mike, the Beaver Corps people, and he said, wow, that's a lot of fence. So maybe we made it a little bit too big. It's getting the shape of it that fits into the stream is the tricky part. This is one of Mike's where he made it rectangular instead of trapezoidal. And the idea is you're supposed to have 3 feet of water between the fence and land, because otherwise the beaver will just dam across the outer side of it. This is another one we put on the bridge just further south of that. And so that's a trapezoidal protective fence. And this is the one where I'm going to put the diversionary dam in here with Mike's recommendation. And then water can still flow there. So I think that will probably work. Now we just need to adapt and monitor it as we see fit. Catherine told us a little bit about trapping as a last resort, but especially if you're trying to implement these measures, you do not want to trap because you want to work with the beavers that you have there. If you have a very aggressive beaver there, and I don't know what to do in that case, but eventually you can, Skip Lyle says you can work with any beaver. So I've only been doing this for 4 or 5 years, so I'll let you know in 20 years. But so that's the case. Is we need everybody to stop doing it and let us try things and adapt, and it might take a couple seasons to get it right. And there's always maintenance, and that's the problem we're having with road ecology too, is that we build these exclusion fences and nobody maintains them, and we're having bigger storms, more flooding, things like that. So some of our fencing is getting washed away. Some of our posts are breaking with all the cold snaps that we had this big dumps from the snowplow. Some of our posts are breaking when we put in the exclusion fencing. So who maintains it when these things happen? Well, sometimes they phone me and I maintain it, and there's no money for me to maintain it. And I'm like, I don't know. We need to get some money together because, and understand that there's just always, whenever you do anything, there's maintenance. So that's hard to, and you know, the maintenance is part of the cost, but you're saving costs by doing the maintenance in the long run, right? Because you're not going to have your bridge wash out, and you're going to have your recreational trail and things like that. So maintain and adapt all your scenarios. Put it in upfront budget, and we've all heard of studies like this where you can actually do a cost-benefit analysis. And I have this handout here with me, right here, if anybody wants. I only have one, but I could give it to the most important person. You guys tell me who that is. And so total cost of flow devices at 8 culverts is $23,000 to put them in. You got your maintenance budget, yay. And then your total cost of flow devices is $48,000. And then 30-year total cost of traditional methods, which is trapping and removal of beavers, it can be as far as $540,000. So you have a savings of $500,000. So we can look at those kind of numbers and play around with them, things like that. And it's more detailed in the handout. This is the city of London. They are very, there's 2 examples that I know of this example where they have protocols in place to work with coexistence of, humane coexistence of beavers and people and roads and our infrastructure. And in the city of London, they have, it's very easy to read. I was reading it today. It's pretty much goes through exactly what I would do in an assessment. You have the flooding, you go there, you map, you assess it. Can you lower the water enough for the beaver to be happy and to stop the flooding conflict? If yes, then you have the scenario for a pond leveler, that's what you put in. If feasible, go ahead. They plant trees for beavers, food for beavers, to keep them there. Fast-growing trees to provide food for beavers at the time the water control device is installed. Okay, and then you said if none of those scenarios are possible, they use live trapping, and then if all else fails, you go to humane urban wildlife conflict policy. So you go to another policy, which I never got to yet. New construction projects, and then talking about being nice to the beavers when you're doing construction and not going in there when they're trying to do their thing. So, I don't know how long I was, but does anybody know what time I started? No, it's 10 after 8. I think I probably started about 7:30, so I think that's pretty good for timing. How long are you supposed to talk for?
As long as you do.
Okay, well then we have lots of time for questions. I asked Doug, and he said, just talk as much as you want. Okay.
Kari, I'm part of a group of concerned citizens a few years ago that brought in the expert Skip Lyle. We managed to petition the city of Belleville to use his services to build 2 beaver deceivers, one on Hague Road and the other one on Boundary Road, I believe it is. Both very successful, but both not maintained by the city that we live in. So my question to you is, and you touched on it, the education factor. So in Belleville, if a property owner feels they're at risk with flooding, then the city of Belleville has to act and protect their property. That's their mandate.
Yeah.
So we were seeing that happening. So
Right.
the beavers were being trapped. We have a policy, we got a policy instituted, and that one line for the trapping was the one line that we used all the time. So what I'd like to see is the education factor. Basically the citizens that are around the wetlands to say, you know, what's beneficial. You talked about the turtles, but there's a lot more than the turtles that's
Yeah.
beneficial in it as well.
Yeah.
So the education, the maintenance, and your little brochure that you're going to hand out, which I think is going to be great. The amount of money the city would save on pulling dams out every year with their big equipment as compared to a little maintenance throughout the whole process over a 30-year plan, I think that's what we're looking at. So we'd like to see that done. We know 2 are successful, just not maintained.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen the one.
Yep.
One that skips, and that was last summer, and the beavers are damming somewhere else. So what I would do there is I would map everything, take a look at the hydrology, and I mean it could be a tricky site, and so you might need that adaptation. You know, do you remove that dam or this dam, or where do you want them to dam? Where is tolerable to dam? And if you can find that spot where it's tolerable to dam, then maybe we can get the beaver to dam there and be happy. That's the kind of equilibrium you could find there. And I would also like to get the Beaver Corps to review that site. So we have every month we have a show and tell of questions that we have. And that site would be really good to get a whole bunch of ideas on what to do there and put a plan together.
Exactly.
Yes.
I find sometimes in park areas, beavers do shoreline dams, and we run into issues where they're eating all the trees that are there. And I see that some of the places are growing trees specifically for the beavers, but is there, an inexpensive solution? I see where we put, I guess, chicken wire around some of the trees, but some of them are regularly shaped, and just wondering what you might suggest for those areas where beavers are very hungry by not damming anything.
Right. I don't really have a lot to suggest because, except for the, so are you trying to save the trees?
Well,
Because if you are,
some trees to remain
Yeah.
in some of this park area. I mean, I guess in some cases I feel like they've set up where there maybe, you know, just unfortunately aren't enough trees to sustain them long term.
Yeah. That is maybe an arborist and working with protecting the trees by putting the mesh around them, protecting the trees you want, and then planting the trees where you want them to be. So that comes like a planning and assessment, and planting the trees so that's where the arborist comes in to tell you where, you know, the trees would work and where they want it, and with the hydrology.
Do you have any idea how many trees a beaver family would typically?
That we would need to do some research, and somebody like Mike Callahan, who's been doing this for 20 years, would know that.
I mean, you could plant
Right off.
small.
Yeah.
I just live over on Front Street opposite the Empire Theater. And behind our building is the Moira River, which, by the way, has very busy beavers. I've noticed this winter. And, but my problem is that the county board has stated that they are going to pave the parking lot behind our building. And it has been like a sandy gravel mix, but they're going to asphalt it sometime this year. The big problem is the turtles are coming out of the river in the spring, and they get directed very often. Someone has to be there watching for them and directing them inside our fenced parking lot. And then, after a period of time, each female turtle lays her nest in the perimeter. If the asphalt goes through, what can we do? A, to stop it, or B, if I fail at stopping the trucks coming in, I'm quite prepared to lay down. This is too important not to get this involved.
Mm-hmm.
Can turtles be relocated? Because this is going to happen
Yeah.
sooner or later.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know
Right.
what to do about it.
Yeah, I would have to take a look at that site, see it, because it sounds like there's a lot of conflicting things, and then map it and see what you can do from mitigation perspective. But you can't translocate turtles very easily. Not because they are used to that place, and that's where they nest every year. So they become disoriented if you move
Yes.
them.
Well, they've been before people have been.
So you might want to encourage them to go somewhere else. Like, why are they going there? That would be a type of, are they going to nest?
Oh, yes, that's where they lay their nest and where the
Okay.
babies go back.
So you would put in a nesting mound to intercept them and maybe get them to nest somewhere else on that way. That's the best thing to do. And so we have a site in Long Point where they're coming from Turkey Point Marsh up to Front Road, same kind of thing. And then they're crossing the road to nest on the other side. We're going to put in a interception fence. It's not going to be a big long, it's going to be 100 meters, and we're going to hope to get them to nest right there. Better than crossing. And then if they nest there, then we can protect the nests or dig them up and incubate the nests under permits. That's the kind of thing you need in these kind of situations. Yeah.
You'll have to come
Kingston.
and see, because there's no
Yes.
place for them to go. It's,
Okay.
It's nothing but city street
Right.
to the next.
Well, you
To
can.
the other end of
It's
the
not
city.
hard to build a mound. You got to maintain it though. It's really just sand.
Just a quick question, so how big would, I saw some of the mounds they made out towards Andanega, and they were huge.
In Kingston,
No,
there's Princess Street. They're huge.
Are they? Do they
Yeah.
need, so I'm like, like walking along the riverfront trail, which I've done a lot of
Yeah.
over the years. Some places, there's just not a lot of geography. Do they have to be that big to support the turtles? Because she's right, there's not much spot
Yeah.
down in
Yeah,
downtown.
no, it depends how many turtles you have, right? And how many are coming up to nest. That's the big thing. As far as what size you want of mounds. But we don't know a lot about exactly where they nest. Some nest in one fire pit. Same turtle goes to that same fire pit every year, but the other ones are a little bit more variable in where they nest. But the one in the fire pit, the nest, that's where the campers have their fires. So none of the nests are going to survive. But so that's we're trying to learn, and that's why Kingston is a little bit of an experimental site right now, where we're monitoring to see, do they prefer south facing? We think so, yes. Okay, but they're nesting on both sides of the road, so we're not sure north or south side and why. Closest to open water, things like that. We're trying to figure that out.
If you build a mound like that, how many turtles would nest in the same mound?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Will they nest on top of each other? Or, not like I've seen turtles dig up other nests, probably by accident, right? So that's the kind of thing. You want enough. How many turtles do you have coming out on this one site? Is it in Kingston it was 100. You have 100 snapping turtles all nesting in a week. So we needed mounds because we weren't sure. But of course they're only using 2 of the 12 mounds we built. So it's the other 10, were they a waste? Will they nest on the other mounds next year? That's why there's long-term monitoring that we need to know that. That's another one. Monitoring, I didn't talk about that. Maintenance, adaptive management, and the monitoring all go together. Because we still don't know a lot. The trial and error. Municipalities don't like trial and error because I call it research and development. But if we did more of it, then we would reduce that, right? We just got to do more of it and do it right and have the money up front. I don't know, it's the hard part. This is the kind of world we live in right now.
Do you work for Ontario?
I work for myself, but I used to work for the Ministry of Transportation 80% of my time. That was before COVID and before. Now I work mostly for Environment Canada grants. I'm writing grants. It's hard. I don't know. That's why I started the Beaver work, trying to think I could add it as a service and be more holistic in what I'm doing and have more opportunity. But yeah, that's just the problem I'm having is the Beaver work is all over the place. Ontario's a big province. So having maybe Eastern Ontario would be good. Peterborough East kind of thing. Road ecology, a lot of turtles. Mike Callahan with the Beavers only goes 150 kilometers from where he lives. He won't go anywhere else. Skip goes kind of everywhere. Skip Lyle. That's why he came here. He wants to come back too. Yes?
Are universities or colleges involved at all in having students get involved in the research projects?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I work with students sometimes on some of my sites, and Queen's University is involved in the Algonquin to Adirondack, so they have some students there. Yeah, it's definitely good for master's students to get involved with these kind of beaver projects, for sure. And we need more of that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you see that trend growing?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a couple of little things that can, you have to be experienced to be able to do this.
Yes.
So a master's student doesn't necessarily have that experience.
No.
So that's the trade-off, but they're cheap.
Yeah. and they will get the experience.
Yes, they will get the experience.
But it takes time.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, Doug?
One of the most proactive places in the country is, believe it or not, Alberta. And there's
It
an
is.
organization there called Cows and Fishes, or in conjunction with the Mestaskis Institute. or
Yep.
something. Yeah.
I
And they're
know
putting
that.
on a webinar this Saturday, I believe, called Beavers on the Landscape. And I think it's 3 hours long, but for anybody who's interested in learning more, right from the ground up, this would be a good opportunity.
Mistakis Institute does a lot of road ecology work. I really like them. They're good.
Are you on there?
Take that, Terry.
You come and shake my hand? All right, I'm done?
No.
Oh.
Stand up. So I'd like to thank you for your wonderful presentation. It was
Okay.
very informative. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure most people here also learned a lot. And there's hope. We know now from this approach that, well, we can coexist with these creatures. We don't have to take the expedient route. And basically that generally means eliminating the beavers. So we don't have to go that route. We can enjoy their presence in our communities, and at the same time benefit from all their activities in maintaining the wetlands and so on. So thank you for that. Now, this would involve, of course, the councils. And speaking of councils, we invited councillors from the various communities to attend tonight, including Belleville. And of course, as Elizabeth mentioned, we have Chris here. And I'd like to thank you again, Chris, for showing up and showing interest in this issue.
I'm certainly here to listen, and I'm very much aware of the issues we've had, and you know, Doug's highlighted them, and the group has highlighted them. You know, it's an ongoing word. You know, I know some people might think that the municipality is hard set, or we have this kill above all else policy, whatever. I'm here to tell you that I'm here to listen. I speak to staff as chair of the Green Task Force. We're an advisory committee to council. You know, we'll do what we can. I took note of some of the links, and you know, that's why I'm here. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, we put out the invitations to everybody else, and well, the response from other councillors was somewhat underwhelming. We didn't exactly get the wave of councillors to attend, what we had hoped for, but you're certainly an important ingredient here. And we're putting a lot of hope in you, that you will bring it up. That you're going to bring it up at council and initiate a conversation.
Well, that's
towards.
That's what I'm saying. I'm here to listen and hopefully have a conversation.
And some of the ingredients are in place, because Kari has offered her professional services to maintain the program, to initiate it, and so on. Quinty Field Naturalist is on board with this, and we even have Quinty Field Naturalist volunteers who would offer their help. We're not experts, but we're willing to help out. So,
Yeah, it's nice to have local people to help with that maintenance. As I said, my problem is logistics, but I'm an hour and a half away. So, and I come here all the time. I actually work in Kingston this summer, hopefully.
so Chris, no pressure on you. But we're counting on you.
But if I have handy hands, my problem is the drills and the hammers and getting in the water and needing 2 or 3 people. But I can tell people what to do very easily.
There's somebody else counting on you, and those are the beavers.
And the turtles.
And the turtles, of course, yeah, sorry. Beavers and turtles. Okay, thank you, Kari.
You're welcome. Wow.